The medieval world is a place of darkness and fear. Fear from attack by forces that can't be explained. In the minds of the people of Europe, dragons are as real as bears or wolves. They are harbingers of disaster and the devil himself. Tales of mankind's war with dragons stretch back thousands of years. Legendary heroes rose to fight them. But not every dragon story is told as myth. Dark Age manuscripts report dragons circling the skies near an isolated monastery. A sword said to have slain a dragon still resides in a holy place of honor. And a historical document attests to the defeat of a monster by a noble knight. Fiery battles with monsters described as real events. To understand the truth is to delve into the midst of the Dragon Wars. (793 AD). An isolated community of monks lives on Lindisfarne, Holy Island in northern England. In just a few days, the island will be consumed by fire and blood in a horrific attack. Before the onslaught, there are reports of dragons flying in the skies above. Incredibly, the Anglo-Saxon Chronicle records this remarkable event.
There came dreadful forewarnings over the land of the Northumbrians, terrifying the people most woefully. These were immense sheets of light rushing through the air, and whirlwinds, and fiery dragons flying across the firmament.
If these beasts were thought to have flown in the skies near the Lindisfarne monastery, what evidence is there that the monks, learned men and scholars truly believed in dragons? The monks absorbed an array of dragon traditions. The ancient world is full of mythical beasts. One of the earliest surviving is the legend of Tiamat. The dragon goddess of ancient Iraq is speared through the mouth by the Babylonian hero Marduk. These early medieval encyclopedias of animals, known as bestiaries, describe creatures believed to be at large in the medieval world. Alongside the pages showing elephants, bears, and doves are dragons. Dragon legends spread across the ancient world to medieval Europe. As the monks transcribe their gospels into beautiful illuminated manuscripts, they illustrate them with dragons. They are the ultimate predator. Monstrous winged creatures with an invulnerable scaly hide. Claws tipped with razor-sharp talons, mouths filled with oversized fangs. Some, like vampires, kill at night. And their greatest and most terrible weapon is fire. In 8th century England, dragons don't just live on the pages of the Lindisfarne Gospels. The Anglo-Saxons believe they're out there. In the skies above them, and in the darkness that surrounds them. Most people can't read, and few travel far from their villages. Knowledge of the outside world comes by word of mouth, from stories told around the campfire. The most famous of these is the epic tale of Beowulf. Beowulf is a Scandinavian warrior king. A vengeful dragon believes it has been robbed by one of Beowulf's servants and devastates the kingdom. Beowulf knows he must face the dragon. Only one loyal kinsman, Wiglaf, remains at his lord's side.
That good man was choked with intolerable grief. The fire dragon had destroyed the fortified hall, the people's stronghold. The warlike king planned to avenge this.
The epic poem describes the weapons and armor used by Beowulf in detail. Although the dragon might be a fantastical creature, Beowulf's armor and weapons are those used by medieval warriors. This armor is called mail, fashioned from thousands of tiny links of iron, attached together to form a strong but flexible coat, designed to deflect arrows and spears. For Beowulf, the shield was critical. Although a traditional shield is made of wood, like linden, to fight a dragon, Beowulf needed something better.
He instructed the smith to forge a curious shield made entirely of iron. He well knew that a linden shield would not last long against the flames.
The sword, Beowulf's primary weapon, was his best chance of piercing the dragon's scaly hide. But to use it, he needed to get close. Dangerously close. As each dawn breaks, the dragon will return to its lair, a barrow filled with treasure. Beowulf knows he must seek out and slay this monster before sunset brings a rain of fire from the old harrower of the dark. Dragons came to be regarded as the guardians of these prehistoric mounds, often the final resting places of ancient peoples and their treasures. The role of the dragon in Beowulf focuses on taboos against raiding these sites. Dr. Yanina Ramirez is an art historian at Oxford University.
In the epic poem, the dragon takes up residence deep underground, in a barrow like this one at West Kennet in southern England. This one is a Neolithic barrow, but the pagan Anglo-Saxons continued to create treasure-filled burials right up to the 8th century.
The poem describes the barrow.
There were countless heirlooms in that earth cave, the enormous legacy of a noble people. The aged dragon of darkness discovered that glorious hoard unguarded.
Beowulf must seek out this dragon's lair and slay the monster before it destroys the rest of his kingdom. The dragon in the Beowulf story had lain in its barrow guarding its hoard for 300 years, until one of the Scandinavian king's own subjects stole a golden cup. The enraged dragon went on the rampage. Desperate to put an end to the destruction, Beowulf tracks the beast back to its lair.
I fought many battles when I was young, yet I will fight again and achieve a mighty exploit if the evil dragon dares confront me, dares come out of the earth cave.
The massive dragon breathes fire. Its bite is venomous. Its skin is as thick as armor. Beowulf has just a sword. With his body filling with vile poison, his life will soon be over. Beowulf dies a warrior's death, and his heroic legend lives on through the centuries. No definitive evidence has been uncovered to prove Beowulf's existence. But in 1939, in eastern England, something remarkable was found that echoes elements of our hero's story. The Sutton Hoo graveship gave up its secrets to archaeologists. They unearthed priceless treasures, weapons, and armor, believed to belong to a powerful warrior king from the same era as described in Beowulf. And the most astonishing object found was a warrior's helmet, crowned with a golden dragon. Beowulf's story blends reality and myth. Real historical details mix with supernatural creatures and superhuman deeds, making the dragons in the tale all the more believable. This ancient story is first written down by English monks. Dragons were familiar creatures to the monks of Lindisfarne. They've seen signs. They know that a terrible fate approaches. And that fate is recorded in their most holy text, a book they read every day, the Bible. The Book of Revelations warns of a coming apocalypse.
And there appeared another wonder in heaven. And behold, a great red dragon having 7 heads and 10 horns and 7 crowns upon his heads.
Many of the monks' great works of art still exist. When they illuminated the Gospels, they decorated them with images of dragons. Just south of Lindisfarne lies one of the most important Christian centers of medieval England. Durham Cathedral, built around the shrine of St. Cuthbert, a bishop of Lindisfarne. Among its coveted treasures are 2 exquisite illuminated manuscripts, and they too are adorned with dragons.
This image provides the perfect example of how the Christian dragon emerges from earlier traditions. You can see this Christ-like figure carrying a spear and standing on this double-headed dragon. These are just like the ones we see on the prow of Anglo-Saxon helmets.
The dragons threatening Lindisfarne in 793 AD were not from the pages of the Bible. They crawled up from a hostile pagan land, home to fearful dragons, and would bring with them an attack of unprecedented terror to the monks. On the undefended island of Lindisfarne, monks brace themselves against the harsh storm. But their robes will do little good against the forces that the winds carry to their shores. Forces against which they have no defense. These are dragons born across the North Sea, in the wild Norse kingdoms of Scandinavia. Like their Anglo-Saxon cousins, the land of the Vikings is haunted with dragons. They believe the giant serpent, Jormungandr, surrounds the entire world. Their inhospitable homelands and the volatile Icelandic shores that they have settled give them no reason to doubt that fire-breathing dragons dwell beneath their feet. The Vikings carved them onto the prows of their ships, striking fear in their enemies. They embody dark aspects of human nature, power, aggression, and greed. And like their dragons, the Vikings believed that a life spent in the pursuit of treasure is a life well lived. More than 1,000 years after the Babylonian dragon goddess Tiamat, dragons are now a feature of this warrior culture. One of the greatest dragons of Norse mythology is Fafnir. Fafnir kills his father and steals his gold, taking the stolen hoard deep underground. Greedily, he gloats over his treasure and turns himself into a dragon to protect it. His brother Regin plots revenge. He uses all his skills as a blacksmith to forge a weapon, powerful enough to kill his monstrous brother. He gives the sword to a mighty Norse hero, Sigurd. Their story is scratched into stones across northern Europe and has become the inspiration for many tales, from a Wagner opera to Tolkien's The Hobbit and Lord of the Rings. Sigurd tracks Fafnir to his lair. This dragon can kill without fire. It has toxic breath. But Sigurd has a plan. Fafnir is covered with thick, impenetrable scales. His only vulnerable spot is his belly. Sigurd digs a pit, hides, and waits. Sigurd's triumph was famous across the Western world. Evidence that English Christians were aware of the story seems undeniable. South of Lindisfarne, in the Church of St. James, stands a magnificent stone. Once the base of a Christian cross, it is densely decorated with images of Bible stories and religious figures. Beneath them, Sigurd, the pagan warrior, appears to be feasting on the dragon. The blood of the dragon gives him magical powers. But with his dying breath, Fafnir warns Sigurd of a curse laid upon the treasure hoard.
Thou shalt find gold enough to suffice thee for all thy life days. Yet shall that gold be thy bane, and the bane of everyone soever who owns it.
Sigurd ignores the warning and takes the gold. In a Germanic version of the myth, bathing in dragon's blood makes the hero invulnerable. But one small area that is covered by a leaf remains untouched. An assassin's blade later finds that vulnerable spot, and the dragon's curse is fulfilled. In 8th century Scandinavia, many echoed Sigurd's lust for gold. Vikings took to the seas in search of their fortune, and they took their dragons with them. The monks of Lindisfarne are isolated, yet they are aware of stories of terrifying dragons. These beasts decorate their holy texts and fly above them, a warning of a terrible reckoning. The Vikings have set their sights on Lindisfarne. It is brutally clear these are the dragons the monks fear. Dragons in human form. The Viking dragon's attack on Lindisfarne has begun. They use hit-and-run tactics with fast, shallow ships that sail right up the beach. A new and bloody chapter in history begins. The first raid on English soil is a bloodbath. The monastery is stripped of its treasures, manuscripts burned, the brethren massacred, and monks enslaved. Dragons have set foot on holy ground, and war is declared on the Christian world. The Northumbrian monk and scholar Alcuin reported the massacre.
Never before has such a horror appeared in Britain as we have now suffered at the hands of pagans. Behold the church of Cuthbert, deluged with the blood of the priests of God, spoiled of all its ornaments. The place, more venerable than any other in Britain, is given as prey to pagan races.
The attack on Lindisfarne sent shockwaves through Christian Europe. It was to be the first of many. The Vikings plundered their way from Russia to Africa. In France, the Norsemen created their own dukedom, Normandy. Here, the Vikings converted to the Christian faith, but they didn't forget their dragons. In 1066, the Normans invaded England. This landmark battle is depicted on the famous Bayeux tapestry. The tapestry shows Norman ships with dragons on their prow. They face the army of the Anglo-Saxon king Harold, shown alongside a dragon standard. The Battle of the Dragons is won by the Normans. They become the new aristocracy of Britain. They rule over a land still fearful of dragons. What better way to promote themselves and their right to rule than to protect their subjects from these evil beasts? Not far from Lindisfarne lie the remains of a chapel. Inside is a stone effigy of a Norman knight, a dragon slayer. The chapel stands on what is reputed to have been a monastic site. A bishop of Lindisfarne was even said to have been consecrated here. Like Lindisfarne, the Vikings had taken it for themselves. Evidence of this checkered history is found all around the chapel. Viking-age sculptures, Norse myths, dragons. Memories of Viking attack may be the origin of local myths about a wyvern, an evil beast that hunts men and women and children. Even though the wyvern might be mythical, it now has a real man as its opponent. The Norman knight, Sir John Conyers. Before Sir John faced the dragon, he went to the church of Sockburn in full armor to pray to the Holy Ghost for protection. The good Christian knight knew it was his duty to save his subjects from the monstrous and poisonous worm. In the vaults of Durham Cathedral lies a relic of Sir John Conyers' battle with the Sockburn dragon.
This rare object is a falchion, a single-handed blade of which there are only a few surviving examples in the world, and this one is thought to be even rarer, as it's the one claimed to have been used by Sir John Conyers to slay the dragon.
For a knight like Conyers, a dragon-slaying legend could have been used to influence his right to rule over his subjects. According to legend, for his valiant deed, the Norman king gave him the estate of Sockburn. The legend lives on. Even today, a new Bishop of Durham is presented with the falchion as part of his ordination ceremony, a symbol of the church's triumph over dragons. After the Normans, the war against dragons became entwined with the Christian struggle against evil.
The people of Britain placed the dragon at the very heart of their stories, but with the Christian faith, it developed in art as a hunted beast trampled by saints. On this font, which predates the church in which it's housed by some 200 years, you can see these dragon-like creatures either side of a religious figure, and he's holding a crook and a Bible. And the way that the crook dramatically pierces the head of the dragon really symbolizes this defeat of evil by the church.
When the pagan force came to Lindisfarne, the Christian monks had been defenseless. Now Christian warriors are armed with a Bible and a sword. Like Sir John Conyers, these men are no longer willing to give their lives to a dragon without a fight. And one will even bring back a trophy for all to see. For hundreds of years, the people of the Western world feared dragons. But a new kind of Christian hero has risen. Dragon wars are now a battle of good versus evil, God versus the devil. Churches across Europe glorified dragon-slaying saints. For a knight to emulate the deeds of a saint, to slay a creature of evil, is the ultimate way to prove one's bravery and devotion to God. In 1095, the Pope called on all Christian knights to defend the holy places of Christianity. Islam controls the East, including the sacred city of Jerusalem. Those who die defending Christendom will be regarded as martyrs. Over the centuries, thousands answer the call. The Knights of St. John have the task of defending the island of Rhodes. This vital stronghold in the Aegean Sea, between what is now Greece and Turkey, must be held at all costs. The Knights turn Rhodes town into one of the most heavily fortified places on Earth. Cannonballs still lie in the killing ground between the inner and outer walls, testament to the many attempts by the forces of Islam to expel religious military order. But an enemy from within also threatens the Knights of Rhodes. The pilgrim road from the old town to the church on St. Stephen's Mount has become a killing ground. A cave in the hillside is home to a dragon. It was the duty of the knights to protect the pilgrims, so they ride out to slay the beast. So many are killed that the Grand Master orders his knights back to the fortress and forbids any further attempts to slay the dragon. Incredible clues about the beast survive to this day. In London, at the headquarters of the English branch of the Order of St. John, is their library, containing documents over 400 years old. Among them, Pamela Willis has uncovered historic accounts and illustrations of the Rhodes dragon.
This one shows us why the Grand Master might have forbidden anybody to go after the dragon.
For all their bravery, the Knights of St. John are no match for the brutish dragon, as this 19th century drawing clearly shows. Perhaps even more surprising, Pamela reveals a description of the beast outlined in an ancient document.
It had a head shaped like that of a large horse, but was wide like a cow's head. The head was scaled like a snake's. Its
breath burnt like fire. Its tail was similar to that of a crocodile. A tough, scaly hide, 2 membranous wings with massive teeth.
The beast roams wild, attacking cattle, farmers, and pilgrims, while the Knights of Rhodes are helpless to defend them. Here on the Street of Knights, one brother was determined to succeed, where so many others had failed. Dieudonné de Gozon knows about dragons. De Gozon's home was near Tarascon in southern France. a town with its own dragon legend. Even the name of the town comes from the legendary local beast, the Tarrasque. Every year, the town celebrates St. Martha's victory over the dragon. De Gauzon returns home to France to train against a mechanical dragon. He equips himself with the best weapons and armor he can afford. Things have changed since Beowulf's time. Jason Kingsley is an expert in medieval martial arts.
Knightly weapon, sword, beautiful, gilded, shows your status, sharp, violent. However, this is the AK-47 of medieval weapons. Does a lot of damage to things in armor. The poleaxe, the thing that means you've been taken out with one hit. Poleaxed. Spear or lance, very basic weapon, but very good to keep you at a distance from the dragon. It allows you to go for the vulnerable spot of its mouth. Traditionally, that's where you're going to go, mouth and throat, with a thrust.
De Gauzon is ready. He returns to Rhodes to face the dragon. The island is under constant threat from hostile Islamic forces. The Knights of St. John spend their days reinforcing their defenses against future attacks. Even worse, in the hills above the city, the dragon devours pilgrims, farmers, and cattle. The islanders fear for their lives, but there is hope. The young knight de Gauzon has returned. The would-be slayer defies his master's command, and in full armor heads out to face the dragon. The stage is set for an epic contest. De Gauzon heads out of Rhodes town to the Pilgrim Road, known as Malpaso, named because the dragon had made it impassable to the pilgrims. De Gauzon's initial charge is a disaster, and his horse flees, leaving the young knight to fight the fearsome monster with only his sword. Against a real dragon, de Gauzon's armor and training might not be enough. Roused, this huge dragon prepares to attack. And will attack again until its prey is destroyed. De Gauzon begins to wonder if this is his last battle. De Gauzon returns victorious to join his fellow knights. He has slain the terrible dragon of Rhodes. Dieudonné de Gauzon has slain the terrible dragon of Rhodes. At the London headquarters of the Order of St. John is an account of his victorious return.
This is a late 16th century history of the order by somebody called Bozier. There was a lot of rejoicing when the dragon was killed, it says. De Gauzon He was hoping for great glory and payment, perhaps, for a deed. But he was forced to endure the opposite. The Grand Master convened a council and by public censure had the knight cast into the most miserable prison for his insolence and presumptions, i.e. he had disobeyed a direct order from the Grand Master. It says, Indi patone querelo in consiglio. He deprived him of his habit, is the phrase, his robe. It really meant that he was banished from the order, dismissed. Now, Bozier says that the council of the order disagreed with the Grand Master. They felt that de Gozon had accomplished such an act of valor that he should be rewarded. So later he was reinstated.
The hero de Gozon ultimately becomes the Grand Master and commands the fortress of Rhodes for 7 years. During this time, this real historical figure builds additional great defensive walls. It is said that on the tombstone of this real and powerful knight were the words, Draconis Extinctor, Dragon Slayer. But what of the Rhodes dragon? Could that also be real?
Rhodes was a small place. If de Gozon had been lying, if people couldn't have verified it, that would have come out. So we have here a record that he had accomplished this deed. This is 14th century. This isn't a sort of myth or magic. Now, what the dragon was is another matter.
Some say that de Gozon brought the head of the beast back for all to see. A 17th century traveller reported having seen the skull hanging from the city gate. 200 years later, the skull was identified as that of a crocodile. Perhaps one that escaped from a ship that traded across the Aegean. These creatures were often killed by being speared in the mouth, the same way the ancient Egyptian serpent Apep is depicted here as being speared. The same way the dragon goddess Tiamat was slain. And the same way that Western dragon slayers were killing their dragons thousands of years later. It's impossible to know if de Gozon really believed he had slain a dragon, or some other predatory creature he mistook for one. Whatever the truth, the battle with a dragon is described among other historical and verifiable events. Just like Conya's slaying of the Wyvern, the dragons over Lindisfarne, and the pagan story of Beowulf. De Gozon's dragon skull was taken down. The physical evidence disappeared. Lost to history, the Dragon of Rhodes was finally laid to rest. The Dragon Wars were over. The monstrous gods of the ancient Middle East grew into powerful dragons of the Germanic world, terrorizing the Christian brethren of Holy Island. From the ultimate predator of the Dark Ages, dragons became the embodiment of the Christian devil. Devolved into brutish beasts, vanquished by saints and warrior knights, they were made extinct by the science of a rational age.
Discover how we perceive time and make decisions in the mind-bending new series Brain Games, starting with a double bill next on National Geographic Channel.